As bold as lions. As bold as lions.
As bold as lions.
As bold as lions.
You're listening to the As Bold as Lions podcast.
Welcome to the As Bold as Lions podcast. My name is Derek, and it is so good to have you join me this day whenever you're listening to this. Just had finished a kind of a month-long break from posting any new episodes on the podcast. Took the month of October to be off and hit a little pause button on everything for a few weeks. Was just a good time to sort of catch my breath and do some family stuff, do some reflecting on things. God definitely just being good in that process and being faithful in allowing me to have a little bit of space, some margins, I guess, is these buzzwords that people use. But had that opportunity, and thankful that if you've hung with me through the podcast and you usually listen to new stuff, that you were able to just kind of go without for a few weeks. And certainly we're getting up into the high 80s. I don't know if this is episode 85 or 86. It'll show up if you're on a certain platform, it'll probably say. But we're getting almost close to 100. I don't think I'll hit it in 2022, but sometime next year will be like episode 100, which will be pretty cool to see that we've been doing this long, and just the kind of volume and library that's sort of out there for people to listen to, and certainly try to share that throughout the month of October, just being off from anything new. And what was cool is I kind of was like, well, there's this momentum, August and September, just great momentum with people listening and just kind of interacting and stuff. And, I'm going to hit the brakes on it in October, and, the whole thing's probably going to plummet for a few weeks, and that's cool. But, and that was my expectation, that a little bit of that last year, and I took a break in October in 2021 for this as well. But that's not what happened this past October. It's like people kept listening. I don't know who you all are, where you're all at. I can kind of go back and see see a little bit of regional, downloads and stuff like that. But it was just a praise to say, thanks God for just kind of keeping this thing going without me even really doing anything with it for these past few weeks. And it's just all God. It's all his blessing upon it. I'm sure if you're like me, if you've got a family with wife and kids and just a lot of activities going on, especially in the fall, things just are busy. And in our home, we've got a lot of birthdays kind of from October through November. I've got 5 kids, so they're ranging in various ages. I've got a teenager all the way down to a 3-year-old, a couple teenagers actually. And just the commitments that they're in. One that's really interested in football, so he's playing flag football. They're all the boys are kind of interested in some degree to football and hockey and things like that. And then one who's in marching band, and so a lot of things for him with competitions and practices. This marching band thing is like a serious deal, I'm learning. And then just church, youth group, a couple of my kids involved in worship and in youth worship and Sunday mornings and stuff like that. Drum lessons. I'm just kind of going through the list here of things. And so seems like the fall just kind of has its own momentum, and it just kind of goes, you pick up from summer, and it just kind of, you blink and like, wow, that, where did the time go? So as I'm hitting November, I'm kind of ready to see some of that kind of come to an end as it seems like it gets a little lighter for the next few weeks. And then of course into the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas and everything. And I already just start looking towards 2023 and the next year. And that's not to just blow past all these cool things that we get to experience and as a family get to do. But I know it goes very fast through the end of the year now. And so just time to reflect, time to pause, time to consider what God's doing in our lives, especially as I'm raising kids, my wife and I preparing for them for the world, just knowing that each one is kind of going through those phases and then they leave the nest and then the next one and the next one is just, it's a little sad, but it's also, it's bittersweet in the fact that, that that's God's plan. And so, we're just trying to be present in as many moments as we can and just listen to his voice as we do this. So that kind of segues into a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. I've got my hot chocolate mug here and ready to dive in. A little cooler, these temps now, and so it's starting to feel like warm drink season of some sort. But the next 3 weeks, as we are in November, and it's just kind of this month where we do consider what we're thankful for. Of course, that can be throughout the year, should be throughout the year, but November is just maybe this time where we reflect on that a little bit more, and we talk about Thanksgiving and we just consider kind of the, just kind of take stock and inventory of our lives, of what we are thankful for. And so I had that in mind as I thought, what am I going to podcast about coming out of this month-long break and jumping into November? What's a good direction to go in with all this? And I just thought, I'm going to talk about things that I'm thankful for. And very first podcast here is talking about the family, talking about my family, just talking about the concept of the family as God's designed it. And just kind of defining what it is that I'm grateful for, I'm appreciative of, that we have certain things in our lives and that God's given them and he's ordained them. First Chronicles 16:34, this command almost to be thankful. It says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever." Just this call to have that heart and that attitude towards him. So what I'm hoping this series does, and whether or not these are things that you can kind of spark thankfulness in you or not, at least just using them to think about what you are grateful for. What can I look at as I look at my life right now, that I'm coming before the Lord with open hands, just thanking him for these things. It's easy to focus on what's wrong in the world. It's easy to wake up every day with that glass half full mentality of pessimism and negativity and just say, I'm discouraged by this or that. And it's easy to just be thankful when there's something that's given to us or there's a reason for us to just say, that's right in front of our faces, like, I'm thankful for this. Maybe your team won this weekend or whatever, or you got a bonus at work, which is a great thing, that not downplaying that at all, but either of those things. But is that just our only motivation sometimes to be thankful, rather than thinking about, I've had good health, or I've had my finances taken care of, or I've had, my kids are doing well, whatever it is, like to kind of think about some of those things that maybe we don't really consider from time to time. And just say, God, I'm blessed. I'm blessed by all that you have done for me. It's not a natural response for me. That's not something that I wake up thinking about every day. And I feel like that's something I want to change, so that I do have this sort of attitude of gratitude before the Lord as I come to Him. And it's not just, God, here's my laundry list of things I want you to do in my life, but rather, God, I'm so thankful that you are doing these things in my life, and I'm just overwhelmed with the way you treat me and how you look towards me. So starting today with the family, not just talking about my family, but the idea of it as a whole. And if this was sort of a logical progression through this series, I probably wouldn't have put this one as the first episode, but probably next time. I think that'll make a little more sense as we go through, but it's just where I decided to start out. It's just kind of the first thing that I wanted to talk about. And, just really after this month off, I've had more time to consider my family, consider why the family is so important. And I realized that I'm just blessed to have a wife and kids and the extended family that I have, both my side and my wife's side. So let's talk about that. And why we can be grateful for what God has designed for us in this. And even if the family is a tough issue for you as you're listening to this, I'm praying that you'll find something here that you're able to build upon. Praying that you'll listen all the way through and you'll find some aspect that just helps you through this discussion. So kind of a 3-point episode here. The first point is simply families are a gift from the Lord. Kind of a longer passage in Psalms 127 verses 3 through 5. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. It's talking about those who have children and raise kids, and just that's a heritage, that's a reward. You're blessed when you do that. And he's just reminding us that, children are a blessing, a good thing. I can look at my week sometimes and just all the things that are scheduled out, and then in my own selfishness kind of go, well, if all these activities with my kids weren't in my week, I'd have so much more time to get these other tasks done that I want to get done. I'd be able to just accomplish and do more, because I look at my wife and I will kind of just sit down. Here's what the week ahead. Here's what Monday is. Here's what Tuesday is. And I'm like, if I could just cut out all these other things that don't directly impact me sometimes, and again, my selfishness, I'd have all this endless time to just keep grinding on stuff that I need to get done. And I'm going to admit that's a really self-centered thought, but that's all honesty that comes through sometimes. It comes from a place of still, after being a grown adult, 45 years old, with a wife, with 5 kids, somehow just wanting to think that my own tank needs to be filled up first, that I need to have all my needs met before anyone else. Totally selfish. And I admit that. And I repent before the Lord of that. Because God reminds me that around the dinner table, and we still try to eat supper, all of us together, even when one or two may be gone from the place, around that table, those faces are blessings. They're not just mere obligations and mouths to feed. Try to switch that perspective and say, God, I'm grateful that I have what I have around this table. And family, whether or not you have kids or not, it's intended as a blessing from God. He puts a lot of emphasis on the family in the Bible. I think we can see that. I think we can make a strong claim for that. He wants families to thrive, and I believe he blesses the man in his family that chooses to fear the Lord and walk in his steps. Psalm 127, that same psalm, but verse 1, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Those who build it labor in vain. I'm thankful for the fact that God chooses to use the family as a primary means of blessing and pouring out. I'm a recipient of that blessing and that goodness. I also have the charge to allow myself to be poured out and used first to my family, and then to allow my family to bless others. And that leads me into my next point. We talked about families being a gift from the Lord, a blessing, and families, secondly, display God's goodness. Hopefully, my own parents, if they're listening, and my in-laws, my father-in-law, mother-in-law, don't mind me pulling them in for a moment into this point. My wife and I, we hosted both sets of grandparents this fall, had kind of separate week-long visits with each set of grandparents, and it was a lot of fun. We got to do a lot of grandkid activities, going to their games, going to music-related things, marching band things, just shopping, hanging out, watching football, of course, playing card games, and certainly eating. Do a lot of eating, and just having the opportunity to see your parents. For my wife, for myself, to see my parents, they're still always mom and dad to me, but to see them in the perspective of grandma and grandpa is a very cool thing. I don't appreciate this as much as I should, but I know it's a way that God speaks to me about his own goodness. I think I see it obviously more so when we're all together and get to see them interact with my kids and just see that relationship that they have with each one. And just thinking from that, the progeny of man, I hope I'm saying that right, progeny, in that meaning the descendants we have, the lineage we have, that quiver of arrows that the psalmist is talking about, filling your quiver full of arrows. Just how cool that is, like to kind of be between my kids and my parents, and see like this is what God's intended, and this is a good thing. This displays his goodness. And one half of my family, I have my in-laws, my wife's parents, they have 3 kids. And then from those 3 kids, my wife and I and her siblings, we have a total of 11 grandkids. And then on the other side, my family with my parents, my sister and I, we have a total of 8 kids to contribute. So there's 11 grandkids on one side, there's 8 grandkids on the other. And I just think about that's a family line right there. That's a heritage right there. And it points to God's goodness. And this next point, I just, I don't take this for granted, but I want to share it because it's all the Lord and it points back to him. I know that both sets of grandparents and all of their kids and spouses are followers of Christ, that they know Jesus. Like I can, without a doubt, say down the line, they all recognize that. It's important to them. They've built their homes on that. And that's all God. And then from there, many of these grandkids have already made that profession of faith. They've already said, hey, I want to follow Jesus too. And just to think about, that's 19 grandkids, and the impact that 19 Christ-following people, that 19 men and women someday will have from there, their homes and their kids. And I just step back from that and say, wow, you are amazing, God, that you can do this and you can use this all for your glory. And would you? And thank you that I get to be just a small part of this. Like I'm just one part of this family. And I pray that you would just keep this legacy going. Like this is the most important thing that I want to pass on. I don't care about riches and inheritance and, even family name or status. I just care about that Jesus is passed on from generation to generation. And would you keep doing that so that you can display your goodness through us. Consider the words of Jesus in Matthew 7:24 and 25. He's talking about building our homes on a firm foundation. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. It had been founded on the rock. Homes that are built on a solid rock are still going to face some storms. Winds and rain are going to come against it. Life is going to throw us some curveballs. And we as Christians are not immune to this. But if that foundation is on Christ, if Jesus is the bedrock of that home, it's going to stand. God's goodness is going to be displayed, and it's going to be a testimony to others around. And so I'm thankful for family because that's an opportunity that we have, that we can be thinking about as we're going from one generation to the next, as we're telling our kids about Christ, as we're, having our grandparents, our parents come in and be part of that as well. And just kind of center our homes around that, around Jesus, not around some other figure, not around some other identity that we try to take on, but just to be fine and be actually like after that, to say that's what this home is about, and it will always be about that. Final point today is that families can be redeemed. I spent a lot of time in the Psalms lately, so why not one more verse from there? Psalm 130, verse 7. O Israel, hope in the Lord, for with the Lord there is steadfast love, and with him is plentiful redemption. I've touched on the Psalms so much, and if you listen to the last podcast before the break, it was all about what they've taught me over the past few months. But once again, there's just this idea that there's steadfast love that we find in the Lord, this enduring love, and that it talks about plentiful redemption. And I think the family is one of those primary ways that we can see and experience redemption, that God can use that within the family unit. I'm thankful for family, finally, because of this point, that we can find redemption. And it's really what makes any of this special to begin with. In a few weeks, we'll be switching gears, moving towards Christmas, doing some podcasts centered around that. Haven't really fleshed that out yet, but considering just this simple fact about what God chose to do in bringing his son into the world. How does he do that? Well, he does it through the family. He does it through Mary and Joseph. And these are some flawed, messed up human beings, yet God chooses to still use them. You may have gotten now to the point in this podcast and you're just saying, well, I'm not really sure what to do with this. My family's pretty messed up. Don't really have a lot of thankfulness in my heart. I can be thankful for other things in my life, but family is not one that really comes to mind and is really easy at this point. So what do I do with any of this? Derek, how am I supposed to apply any of this to my life? And I'm gonna say, hey, I agree with you. You're right. There are some family situations that are tough, that are just messed up. And some things in our minds may seem almost irredeemable, too far gone beyond God's grace, just a situation that seems hopeless and without repair. But to pose this question, and this is a big one to mull over, in Christ, can you still be used as an instrument of grace and redemption in your family? And would you be willing to be an instrument that he would choose to bring reconciliation, to bring Christ's love and restoration? Can you look to your own progeny and lineage? And if you're young, can you realize that you now have a chance to start a different path? You can put Christ first and allow him to be the head of your home. Families, I believe, can be redeemed, and it's one of the most beautiful stories when we see this happening. One of the most beautiful stories that can be written. I think about the Bible, and there's a lot of messed up, seemingly irredeemable type situations in the Bible involving families. And one that always comes to mind is just the story of Joseph and his brothers. And we know what sort of falling out and just brokenness was there. But when you read that story, you realize God is always after redemption. He's always trying to bring broken things back together and heal and restore. And that had to happen for the nation of Israel to really grow into what it was going to be. He had to restore those relationships. By the end of Genesis, Jacob, who is the father of all these brothers, Joseph and his 11 brothers, he dies. And those brothers, knowing that Joseph is in this place of authority in Egypt, if you remember, they come to him because of the famine and just a bunch of things that kind of go back and forth between them, and they reconcile. But when Jacob dies, when the dad passes, these 11 brothers are then worried, like, what's going to happen with Joseph? Are we going to face some sort of retaliation now? Now dad's out of the way. There's nothing kind of keeping him from doing whatever it is he would want to do to get back at us for all the harm that we did to him. And we could read that and say, yeah, he has every right to kind of go after you guys because you guys were just complete jerks to him. But look at Genesis 50, 19 and 21. It says, Joseph replied, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? As for you, what you intended against me for evil, God intended for good, in order to accomplish a day like this, to preserve the lives of many people. Therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." So Joseph reassured his brothers and spoke kindly to them. Now, only God could redeem a family so broken like Joseph's, and he's the one that can redeem yours as well. Joseph looks at the whole situation and says, this was God's plan. It was his doing to allow everything to go this way so that then we could come to this moment where the lives of many could be saved. He says to preserve the lives of many people. And I think he means at the time they're living in, but also looking forward and saying this had to happen in order for what's to come. And maybe as hard as it is to be thankful for your family, you may get further removed from it someday, or, in just beyond it at some point, and be able to look back and see like that had to happen. That hard experience was actually good because it forced us to then come together and grow. And in closing, just kind of one more point of all this, many today want to redefine the family and maybe just completely dismantle it if we're honest. At least that nuclear family idea of a husband and wife, a dad and a mom and their kids. I think it's man's attempt really to sort of step in and redeem it himself, to say, well, this is broken or whatever, So we're going to try to fix it without God's intervention or, anything else. It comes through redefining gender. It comes through redefining what a man or a woman is, a husband and a wife, mom or dad. And I think those are all attacks on the family. And it's attacks on what God has ordained as good and special and right. And I'm calling Christians out a little bit here. I call myself out as part of this, but I think what we've done is, rather than speaking from a place of truth and authority about the family and calling things out when they're not lining up scripturally, we've allowed this thinking to just start kind of creeping in and influencing the church, kind of getting a back door and coming in and affecting us. Now, I'm thankful for the family because it's God's way that He intended for us to live. He didn't mess up when He made and created Adam and Eve and then told them to go forth and be fruitful and multiply. That was a command, that was a directive from Him, and that's still, I believe, what we're called to do as Christians. Sin is what brought brokenness into the family. And some of our deepest, darkest wounds come from within our families. But that was not God's plan. We still live in a fallen world, but through faith in Jesus, in His way, the only way, we're able to redeem what is broken through Him. The family's still going to be lost and apart from Him. Culture is still going to attempt to redefine what a family is apart from Him. But as Christians, I think we do well to take a moment to consider and be grateful that God gave us our families. He gave us an opportunity to show and receive love from those nearest to us in a way that really expresses His own love for us. We love because He first loved us. So this series, these next 3 weeks, today and the next 2 weeks after this, it is my attempt, again, to look at some of these things that I'm especially grateful for in my life. And I just urge you to pray about that and give thanks for the things you're grateful for as well. Is the family on your list? If so, praise God. If not, would you ask the Lord to show you His redemptive power over even this area of your life? Guys, as always, I love you. Would love to pray with you through any of this, or just keep the discussion going. By now you know where to reach me, but if you don't, info@derekcharlesjohnson.com is my email. You can also find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, places like that. But really just to connect with you and to say, hey, I'm praying over these messages. There's things I'm thankful for that I'm sharing this month, but it's not always an easy conversation to have, because I know even with this first one, it's like there's some real hurt and brokenness within families, even within the church and Christians, and people just struggling with how do I love my family? How do I prepare my kids for their own lives? How do I, try to restore broken fellowship? Things like that are real issues that we're dealing with. And so I pray that God would just use this and send it out to whoever needs to hear it. Might not be everybody, but there are certain people that I believe He wants to hear this message. So would you pray with me in that as well? Guys, I leave you with Ephesians 5:15-17, our theme verse here. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. God bless you guys. We'll see you again soon. Hey guys, this is Derek Charles Johnson. You have been listening to the As Bold as Lions podcast. I am a blogger, a songwriter, an artist. And if you've been encouraged by this podcast, please go ahead and subscribe and share, and head over to derekcharlesjohnson.com for more encouraging content. God bless.